13 years ago at this time, I just surrendered to federal prison. And it feels like yesterday. And for all of you going through this experience, I know it feels like it will never end, but it will. It will end. It sounds crazy, I know. I never thought that it would. And it will. And here I am 13 years later, hoping to share some experiences with you that will help you, that will make you stronger and better. And maybe it's one strategy or idea that gets you through the next day or week, month or year. And I'm very grateful for you watching this video as I talk a little bit about my life on the inside and share some ideas that I really hope helps you. Because when I surrendered to prison, I did some good and bad things. I immediately kicked into a fitness routine. In fact, while sitting in a cell waiting to get processed in, knocked out my first 100 push-ups I had done in a long time. So I certainly had a goal of getting into shape. But I also had a goal of trying to repair and mend some friendships and use my time productively. But I didn't really know what that meant. And if you have yet to go to prison, or if you're home from prison watching this, think back before you went away. Did you tell people what you wanted to do? And if you did, were you specific? And that's really the takeaway, what I'll get into in this video. The specifics of what you intend to do in prison and sharing them with people, because I believe that's the only way to traverse the system successfully. Our work at White Collar Advice and Prison Professors isn't to glamorize prison. It's not to sensationalize things that are sensationalized on television. That's not the purpose of this channel. Others do it, they do it well. If that's what you're after, you should dislike, unsubscribe, and go elsewhere. This is for the executives, people who don't think in criminal ways, who began their career with good intentions, who never imagined they would be here and deal with the fallout of a government investigation. And many of you, as I know, you're spinning out of control and you want to plan and you want to know that there's a better life ahead. That's who this video is for, because I was you. I didn't have bad intentions, yet I was still standing for count in federal prison. Upon my surrender to federal prison, yes, I had an initial goal in those early days of exercise, and it's pretty easy to want to exercise when you live 80 yards away from a track. But what I didn't do is get specific. And what I mean by that is before I went in, I told people I'm going to learn some Spanish, I'm going to read, I'm going to exercise, all good goals, but it wasn't specific. And frankly, it didn't help me really prepare for the hardest part, what would be coming home. And it was about 3 or 4 months into my prison term when I was speaking with my friend, mentor, now business partner, Michael Santos, expressing to him that I saw a number of men in federal prison, doctors, lawyers, executives, scared to go home. Imagine serving 2 years for tax fraud. You're scared to go home. You're finding ways to stay in prison or turning down halfway house time. That's scary. You're in a minimum security camp. There's no violence. I didn't see fighting. It was a pretty comfortable, easy environment. In fact, for some, they got so complacent, so comfortable to the lifestyle that many of them figured, I'll figure it out when I come home. I'm going to delay going home, as crazy as that sounds, but I didn't want it for me. So when I was lamenting to Michael or expressing concern about people in prison wanting to stay longer, he said to me, why are you any different? Do you think you're on a different track, bud? Do you think you're different than other people because you played baseball at USC? And you talk about that a lot. Aren't you kind of over the glory days? Nobody cares, dude. Nobody cares. You know who does care? Your parents. They're wondering if you're going to encumber them the rest of your life. They're wondering how you can get through this. Their youngest son, who they gave a lot of privilege and opportunity to. That's what I'd be concerned about, bud. Not the fact that you can run 10 miles and do 20 pull-ups. Nobody cares. That was an aha moment for me. It changed my life. And from there, he said, how about you really begin to hold yourself accountable beyond issuing platitudes and cliches about prison and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger? How about you create a plan and encourage people to hold you accountable? And after he said that to me, I said, I'm still not ready. And about 2 months later, in October or so, I was ready to begin documenting my journey. And that's the first tip that I'm going to give to all of you. You've got to get specific if you're going to federal prison. You've got to get specific about what it is you intend to do. And I wasted many months before I got specific. And what I mean by that is I began to get very specific about what I was reading. It's one thing to read and forget about what you've read because it entertains you. It's another thing to read with a purpose. It's another thing to have a note-taking strategy, something that Michael introduced me to. When you read, take notes, write down the vocabulary word if you don't know it, and then ask yourself, why are you reading this book? How will it help me in prison when I come home, and what have I learned from it? That's transformative because then I could retain the information. That's a takeaway for all of you. Read with a purpose. Just don't read 100 books if you can't retain it. Identify and share with your network how many books you're going to read, what are the books, why are you reading them, and how will they help you when you come home. Get specific. Share it with your network. Build content. Write letters. Write book reports. Write business plans. Get specific. If not, when you come home, people are going to say, what did you do all day? Well, I did great things. Sure you did. Nobody's ever going to know unless you have evidence. The evidence that I began to accumulate in prison is the reason why the day I came home in 2009 in the Great Recession, my probation officer, nice guy Isaiah Murrow, allowed me to work as a federal prison consultant, working with felons. He said, initially, I can't allow you to do this. Who's going to pay you? You're a felon. You're going to work with other felons. Go get a job for $15 an hour. Nothing wrong with a $15 an hour job. I did it for 3 months and a half hours, but I wanted more. I wanted to help people. I wanted to help myself, and I wanted to create a record that could demonstrate that I can emerge from this experience better and stronger, beginning to think differently like an underdog by sharing my story, sharing what I learned. That's another tip for all of you. Think differently. Do not be afraid to share your story. Talk about lessons learned, because at the end of the day, you know what people only really care about? How can you help me? And if you have a skill set, nobody cares that you went to prison, but if you lie or pretend that it didn't happen, they're going to find out that you're going to wonder the rest of your life. Did they find out from somebody else, not from me? You've got to manage the narrative. You've got to create content that demonstrates what you've learned, the motivations behind your decisions, the decisions themselves. I began to get specific and do that in prison through the blog and then the book and through my speeches and consulting. So the reason that I was able to consult that first day is I provided content to my probation officer. Give me a chance. And within a week, I had 3 clients. Why? Many of them read the blog that we were working on in prison. Get specific. Just don't read what are you reading and why. With exercise, just don't say I'm going to exercise. How much are you going to run? How much are you going to lift? How many hours a day? To work, many people in prison find jobs that keep them busy. 8, 9, 10 hours a day to keep them busy. And that's fine. Now, I did my job in prison. All of you should do your job in prison. But I wanted a job that took an hour a day in the kitchen, 5 days a week, an hour a day. So I had maximum time for introspection, to think, to grow my network, to write letters. That's another thing. You need to specify how many letters you're going to write and to whom and why. Everything has got to be strategic. If not, what will happen is you're going to get to prison, you're going to adjust, very little violence, very little problems. You're going to be there and think, wow, it's really not that bad. I'm in a minimum security camp. I get comments all the time on my YouTube channels or elsewhere when people see media. I'll get some random message. Oh, you were in a camp. It was a white-collar country club. It really was a prison. Call it what you like. I don't care. I don't care. You know what I cared about? Coming home strong. Proving to my parents that I could take my first punch in life and overcome it. I think in part 13 years later, part of the reason I hope I'm always striving to become better. We've never fully arrived. But I hope the success I've had as a husband and hopefully father and in my community in the way that I've been able to work and grow this with our team is because of the lessons I began to learn and share in prison. And all started from the premise I want to do better. I want to share lessons learned. I want to help people and I want to help you. So get specific with your exercise, with your reading, with how much you're going to write, with content that you're going to produce. I beg you to get specific. And in so doing, you begin to identify your values. Now, I was a total hypocrite before I went to prison. I was a liar. I said one thing and did another. I said family was important to me while I was a defendant, but I didn't go to Mother's Day one year because I was so angry and sickened over my case. I didn't want to go and see family and get asked questions. What's happening? Are you going to get sentenced to prison? What are you going to do for work? When do you see the lawyers again? I'm not going. I said family was important to me. I didn't go to Mother's Day. Terrible with as much as my parents and mom specifically had awful, terrible. I was selfish, naive, foolish. It's a contradiction. I would tell people fitness was important to me. It wasn't. Character was important to me. I read books in my 20s, all golf-related books. I did very little to develop myself. I said one thing, I did another. So in prison, and this may not excite you, and this may not lead to hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube, but you know what? It's all good because the person watching this wants to prepare, will invest the time and go through it. Identify your values in prison. What are they? If it's fitness, what does that mean? If it's character building, if it's reading, if it's business development, if it's your family, if it's faith, religion, community, what does that mean? Share it with your network. Michael Santos taught me how to do that, and it changed my life. And I don't think anything I teach a white-collar advice is overcoming adversity. Michael Santos overcame adversity through 26 years in prison. Adam Clausen overcame adversity through 20 years in prison. Sean Hoppen overcame adversity through 12 years in prison. I served a measly year in a minimum security camp. It's not overcoming adversity, it's taking responsibility for your own life. Because what I don't want is for you to reach the end of your prison term and be scared to death, wondering and waiting what you will do to sustain and support your family, wondering if it's easier to stay in prison and turn down the halfway house time, because I know you're obsessed about that halfway house time. I know all the buzzwords you think about: First Step Act, Second Chance Act, RDAP, mitigation, getting out earlier. I'm guilty of it too. I create videos with those same headlines and buzzwords. There's no doubt you want to get out earlier. The question is, if you get out early, are you ready, as I was, to thrive? You will only thrive, as I wrap up this video, with content. If you get specific, if you identify your values and then ask yourself, am I living faithfully to these values? Or am I a contradiction? Or am I a hypocrite? Or are you going to fall victim to the famous prison parlance, I'm going to wait till I get 6 months to the house to prepare. And of course, by then, you're not preparing. You're too ingrained in your prison routine. We create habits really quickly. And I want you to create best habits the first day you get there. So I'm reading this great book. I'm still a long distance runner. I'm reading this great book called A Runner's High. And I've shared this quote with a bunch of clients and friends. As I wrap up this video, on page 39, Dean wrote, I keep grinding along. There are 2 ways to get to the finish line of an ultramarathon. The first is to put your head down and grunt your way through it. I don't know the other way. There's no other way for you. There's no other way for you. There's no other way. You're going to get through it, grunt, put your head down, be angry some days. You're going to miss your family, be upset over the sentence. I understand it. All the money you may have given lawyers and the press releases that may not be true. And I know many of you going through this experience have done nothing wrong and you shouldn't have been prosecuted. It's part of the reason the experience was easier for me. I did it. So it's easier to serve time. But I know many of you watching this should not be going, or it should be handled civilly. People have overcome worse. As I wrote in Lessons from Prison, Viktor Frankl found meaning in life through the concentration camps in Auschwitz. People have overcome worse. I beg you to prevail and win and fight. Do not let this amount to a life sentence. So grunt, put your head down, get to work, get specific, identify your values, live faithfully to them, create content, create assets, share them with your network, and then when you shake the hand of your probation officer upon your release from prison and you tell him this is what I plan to do, he will not say no to you, just like he didn't say no to me, because you will have proved worthy of it. 13 years ago at this time, I had just done my 100 push-ups, had to stop after 15 seconds because I was out of shape, and I made my way into prison and shared a lot of good lessons and learned a lot. And I'm just grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm grateful to be here and to be teaching and advising you. And thank you for coming to this channel. Our team welcomes the opportunity to speak with you. And I know I ramble a bit in these videos. I'm thinking of more things to say. But I think I'm going to wrap it up here. This experience will eventually end. Be ready when the other side comes and live the rest of your life productively, as I'm still striving to do. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.